is in crisis.
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
Sawadee ka, very good evening and welcome to our 7 o'clock news, Thai PBS World tonight. I am Natha Gomonwadin.
And good evening, I'm Rayong. And it's quite obvious that Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha is now facing challenges on two fronts. On one hand, he is trying to meet public expectations with his cabinet reshuffle. And on the other, he suddenly is facing challenges from students who have returned to the streets now.
Yes, and they seem very active this time on the student activism. But the good news for foreigners to come to Thailand, the government has set up that they can be allowed to enter Thailand, but obviously with certain conditions. And today, the new case of COVID-19 in Thailand is one new case, and without local transmission. It's the case of state quarantine.
Another imported case,
Yes.
right? All right, tonight we'll start with politics. It appears that Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha is under increasing pressure to speed up a cabinet reshuffle after another member of his cabinet resigned today. Taiwan Niptapanlop this afternoon handed in his resignation as Minister of the Prime Minister's office. He said he wanted to give the Prime Minister a freer hand in reshuffling the cabinet. Taiwan is an MP and leader of Chat Patana, a minor partner in the Prayut coalition government. His resignation follows those of 4 other cabinet members last week. Taiwan said his party is still supporting the Prayut government, and his resignation should open the way for the Prime Minister to bring in capable people to help the country tackle the crisis it is facing. Last week, Deputy Prime Minister Somkit Jatusipitak and his economic team, including Finance Minister Uttama Savanayon and Energy Minister Sontirat Sontijirawong, resigned from the government. They are believed to be under pressure from the new leadership of the Palang Pracharat Party, the core component of the coalition, which wants to have a bigger share of the cabinet seats. And Kunatha, is quite obvious that the Prime Minister is still working hard on his new cabinet lineup.
Obviously, yes, Kun Thepchai, Prime Minister Prayut last week confirmed that he had approached Kun Pridi Dawchai, a well-known banker, to join his cabinet and was still waiting for his final answer. He did not say what ministry he wants Pridi to take, but it is widely speculated that he will succeed Uttama as finance minister. The Prime Minister did not mention any candidates for other vacancies, only saying that he had all their names in his head. 2 former governors of the Bank of Thailand, Kun Prasan Tairat Waragun and Kun Virathai Santiprapop, have turned down invitation from Prime Minister Prayut to join his cabinet for family reasons. Prime Minister Prayut said he expects to have a new cabinet lineup ready by August. Kun Thepchai.
Yeah, and on another front, another challenge that the Prime Minister is facing, the coronavirus pandemic has put a temporary break on student protests, but now the students are back on the streets. At least 2,000 people turned up for an anti-Prayut government protest at the Democracy Monument on Ratchadamnern Avenue on Saturday. It was followed by 2 smaller rallies in 2 major provinces on Sunday. They were the biggest political rallies so far since the outbreak of the coronavirus in March. Despite warning from authorities, the students went ahead with the demonstrations in defiance of the state of emergency, which bans public gatherings. The state of emergency has been in effect since late March to fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The demonstrations were coordinated under the leadership of a student movement calling itself Free Youth Group and the Student Unions of Thailand, which have been campaigning against the Prayut government and the role of the military in politics. The biggest of the demonstrations took place at the Democracy Monument on Ratchatham Avenue. The choice of the protest venue was symbolic. The monument was built to mark Thailand's end of absolute monarchy in 1932, and it has always been used as a site of pro-democracy activities for decades. The protesters called on Prime Minister Prayut to resign and for the parliament to be dissolved to pave the way for a new general election. They also want to see a new constitution that is more democratic than the current one, which they believe allows the military to dominate politics. The students also want to see an end to the harassment of people who are critical of the government. The protesters gave Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha 2 weeks to respond to their demands, or they will step up their street protests.
The protesters had earlier announced they intended to keep an overnight vigil at the Democracy Monument, but later decided to end the rally at nightfall, claiming that there were threats to their safety. On Sunday, smaller rallies were held in the northern province of Chiang Mai and Ubon Ratchathani in the northeast. The protesters, comprising mostly young people, echoed the same demands by the demonstrators in Bangkok. In Chiang Mai, the rally was held at Tha Phaya Gate, a landmark of Chiang Mai. Protesters held posters calling on Prime Minister Prayut to resign and a new constitution to be drafted. In Ubon Ratchathani province, the demonstration took place near the city Pillar Shrine in Mueang district. The crowd, however, was much smaller than those in Bangkok and Chiang Mai. There was heavy presence of police at the 3 demonstrations, which were largely peaceful. Police tried unsuccessfully to urge the demonstrators to break up by warning them that they were violating the state of emergency. The demonstrations came under attack by critics who were offended by messages in some of their posters that were directed at the monarchy. They also accused some of the opposition politicians of being behind the protests. The spokesman of Khao Klai Party, the reincarnation of the now dissolved Future Forward Party, said the party supported the student protest but was not involved in the event. Thanathorn Jungruengkit, the former leader of the Future Forward Party, also declared support for the students but denied having anything with the protests. A security agency said they are keeping a close watch on the student activities. Police are weighing the possibility of taking legal action against some of the student leaders. Police Lieutenant General Phakapong Phornphetha, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, said one possible initial charge against them is alleged violation of traffic law. Charges related to alleged violation of the state of emergency are being studied, he said. 5 policemen suffered minor injury in a scuffle with the students during the demonstration, he said.
Yeah, and quite interestingly, Gunata, the student rallies have won support from a key leader of the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. And this is a tweet from Joshua Wong, a very well-known student activist in Hong Kong. He said, now it is time for us to support them back since we are both fighting for democracy, liberty, and a bright future without fear. People's voices should be respected and heard, but not suppressed and silenced, Joshua Wong said in his tweet yesterday, and which was very much welcomed by the organizers of the demonstrations in Thailand. Thai students, activists, and some of the opposition politicians, including Kun Thanathorn, the former leader of the now dissolved Future Forward Party, voiced their support for Joshua Wong and his colleagues during their struggle for democracy last year. And today, Deputy Defense Minister General Chaichhan Changmongkol quoted Prime Minister Prayut as saying that he was concerned with the safety of the protesters in the face of the pandemic. He said the Prime Minister had instructed authorities concerned to ensure that the rallies were peaceful and did not disturb public order. General Chanchai was speaking during a Senate session this morning in response to a query from a senator on how the government is handling the latest political activities. The general denied charges that critics of the government have been harassed. And as for the demand for a new constitution, he said a House committee is already in the process of reviewing the present constitution. He also warned protesters not to engage in any activities that would offend the monarchy. And Kudatha, just an hour ago, dozens of students and political activists started rallying in front of the headquarters of the Royal Thai Army on Rajadamnern Avenue. The demonstration was prompted by a comment by a former deputy spokeswoman of the army, which described the student rally as childish. The protester said her comment was an insult to the students. They also called on the army personnel to side with the pro-democracy movement. So that's the latest, and probably a new challenge for the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, who already has his hand full trying to come up with a new cabinet lineup.
Yes. Obviously, at this very juncture, the policeman also said that we are under COVID-19 pandemic, so the student or young people should not group together this way to rally or to show what they want through the protest.
Yeah.
But COVID-19 is still a problem.
That's right.
That's the fact.
Yeah, but so far the police have not filed any formal charges against the student protesters yet, but they said they are in the process of studying whether any laws have been violated or not. Because we know that, as we all know, the state of emergency is still in effect, right? Which basically bans all public gatherings on health grounds. But of course, the critics of the government believe that the state of emergency is there to be used as a tool to silence and oppress the critics of the government. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And when talking about COVID-19, today it's one important case reported. It's the case from Singapore, which is found in state quarantine. But the CCSA is going to have a major decision this week, Kun Thepchai, on allowing foreigners to enter Thailand, but obviously without condition. The government will this week make another major decision to further ease the restriction of the lockdown that will see the country open to foreigners that will include migrant workers from neighboring countries. Dr. Tawisin Wisanuyothin, spokesman of the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, said that migrant workers from Laos, Cambodia, and Cambodia will be primarily for food industry and construction work. He said the two sectors have severely suffered from labor shortage since the outbreak of the pandemic. Other foreigners to be permitted into the countries will be organizers of trade exhibitions, film production, crew members, foreign travelers holding Thailand elite card, and foreigners. He said foreign visitors who are here for medical treatment or on medical wellness programs will be allowed to stay on after completing their first 14-day stay. They will be among the sixth phase of the relaxation of the lockdown measures to be decided by a full meeting of the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration on Wednesday. Kun Thepchai.
Yeah, and Dr. Tawisin today tried to emphasize that the further easing of the lockdown is necessary to help revitalize the economy, but gave an assurance that maintaining public health safety will be the priorities of the government. And on the question of Thai citizens who are still stranded overseas and wanting to come back, Dr. Tawisin said authorities are working out ways to help them return as soon as possible. He said initially medical authorities were able to accommodate a return of a maximum of only 200 people a day, but now as many as 600 are returning daily, which is within the country's medical capacity to handle. All returnees are subject to a 14-day state quarantine and necessary medical treatment, all paid by the state. He said the government would welcome more returnees if they are willing to settle for the so-called alternative state quarantine, meaning that they have to pay their quarantine at facilities of their choice but sanctioned by the government. So this is the latest on the question of when Thais who are now being stranded overseas by the thousands will be allowed to come back. So previously, as we all know, that only 200 people could be accommodated because of the limitations of the medical facilities, right? But now the authorities have increased the quota up to 600 people a day.
Yes.
But they're more willing to accept more
Yeah.
if the others beyond the quota are willing to pay for the medical facility.
Yes. So probably tourism in Thailand will be shifted to wellness and health tourism. And talking about COVID-19, all eyes perhaps are still on Rayong province. Especially today is the first day of reopening schools in Rayong province. About nearly 300 schools will be already open today, and we can see how students have to adjust themselves to learn online and offline altogether. Let's take a look at this report by Kun Chalanthorn Yothasamut.
...274 schools in Rayong reopened today after a week of closure as a preventive measure against COVID-19. However, for a big school like Rayong Withayakom, with more than 30 students per classroom, both online and on-site class need to be run in parallel in order to maintain social distancing, and facial masks should be worn at all times in the school ground.
This is the lunch time for high school level students at Rayong Pithayakom, and this is also the first day of their school reopening during the COVID-19. Usually this cafeteria will be packed of more than 1,500 children. Due to the COVID-19, the school reduced the number of students in half, and the other half continued their learning through online. We cannot deny that the COVID-19 situation in Rayong affect the students, both their activities and their learning system.
Some students start their PE class today, and this is their first softball class after practicing and complete their assignment via TikTok. For classes like PE and science class, online teaching might not be feasible.
We try our best to monitor and take videos and pictures of what we're doing in class for the student, for the other half at school. We did a experiment on chemistry about solution. We tried really hard to zoom in to help and try ask at home, can you see the scale, can you see the numbers? And I think it went quite well because the students in class helped the teacher, and we emphasized with the one at home that we know it's not easy to see and it's not very engaging, so we try to encourage them that please tell us if you want it zoomed in or is it out of focus, so we actually communicate a lot.
Rayong Withayakom schools has approximately 20 international teachers. For many teachers, this is their first time teaching online class. Many of them agree that online class can only be implemented as a short-term solution, and face-to-face meeting and socialization is also part of the learning process.
And it was new for me as well. I've never done online teaching in this way before. So I think for myself and for most teachers, we are using the Google Classroom app, which is quite easy to use. So we can prepare files to send to our students of all the material, as well as set assignments for the students. So for myself, when I'm teaching the lesson, I make a video and then I put it onto the Google Classroom app. And so at home, the students can watch that video and complete the work at the same time. And so it's been pretty easy to adapt to, but it does create extra work for both the teachers and the students.
For a well-facilitated school like Rayong Withayakom, switching to online class might face fewer problems and challenges comparing to the school in remote area. Impact of COVID-19 toward education equality is one of the major concerns, not only in Rayong, but at the global level.
A lesson learned from school headmaster is that every school should be prepared and be prepared for flexible school system in order to deal with COVID-19 situation.
Even though it's quite tough, we can see how teacher and student are very active in coping with changes, new normal in their learning.
Certainly something that another awakening for the young students, something they did not expect.
Yes. And Kun Thepchai, there's also voice of concern among local business operators in Rayong regarding COVID-19 because right now they fear that their business will face difficulty for quite a long time and they quite fear how they would cope with this difficulty. So let's take a look at this report by Kun Thanadet Tanbaripan from Rayong province.
Now you're watching a report from Rayong province. Last week there was a very big news about an Egyptian military who was found infected with COVID-19 and several schools were closed because of that matter. And today I'm going to talk with local people, shops owners and businesses in Rayong.
ลูกค้าไม่มีแล้วก็มันก็แบบว่าเงียบไปเลยเนาะจากที่ว่าเกิดข่าวแล้วก็ไม่มีคนมาเที่ยวเลย
Many shops on the street have been struggled for almost 4 months. They thought tourists would coming back, but the news last week made Rayong even more quiet. It dramatically affects their family income. At the same time, hotel business is also in a nightmare period. Many rooms, more than 50%, were cancelled due to the news last week. Whereas, as a 1 week passed, today is a school reopening again in Rayong, and a very small number of people starts coming here seems to be a good sign.
มันก็เหมือนเป็นแหล่งเลยจริงๆโลกอ่ะเพราะว่าฝรั่งต่างชาติ
They told me that there's nothing to worry about if they keep physical distancing and do not go to crowded places or places that have shown in the news. Besides, they are able to enjoy scenery.
After talking to those people who have been directly affected by this matter, most of them told me almost the same thing, that they wish everything will get back to normal or even better very soon, even though it's very hard for them to survive under this circumstance.
That's the report by Kun Thanadet Tanbaripan, Thai PBS World Team from Rayong province. So we can see how local business people are still quite worried with COVID-19, and especially how to recover their business.
Yeah, but the good news is that all the people who have been tested on suspicion that they might have come into contact with the Egyptian soldiers who roam around the downtown 2 weeks ago, right? None of them was found to be infected.
Yes.
And the same as the case in Bangkok with the Sudanese diplomat, right? Whose 9-year-old daughter was tested positive. And then after a series of tests with a lot of people, none of them, again, has been found to be infected. So good news on both fronts.
Yeah, so far good news for us. And right now, Kun Nat Bunak has this story for us regarding US politics. It seems that it's quite heating up, especially one candidate just announced that he would like to participate in the presidential election. Quite unexpected, isn't it, Kun Nat?
Very unexpected to see a worldwide, what was going to say, the world hip-hop star Kanye West to be running for president, because remember how he used to say that he will run for president at the beginning of this month? Finally, yesterday he made his debut rally in South Carolina yesterday. So let's have a listen to what he said during the rally.
I'm not trying to quiet your voices, actually, so I don't want to say that in an improper way. I just haven't had the time to word it in the most elegant way possible. So that's a Stephen move. When Harriet Tubman never actually freed the slaves. She just had the slaves go work for other white people.
Y'all, we leave it right now.
It sounds like a very impromptu speech here. So Ray here, he discussed the economic inequality in the US, referring to the racial injustice and the mistreatment of Black Americans. So this is pretty much in light of the George Floyd protests and the racial discrimination that has been going on for so many decades. So for those who may not know who Harriet Tubman is, she was an American abolitionist and political activist. Born into slavery, she was widely known for rescuing enslaved people at the time. So based on the speech here, it looks very casual, very informal as well. I like how you said that. I just haven't had the time to word it in the most elegant way possible.
Yeah. He said he would like to fight on social inequality. And what about other issues that he have in mind in his debut?
Besides this social inequality, one of the issues that he raised was the abortion issue, which actually got him very emotional. So let's have a listen.
My mom saved my life. It would have been no Kanye West because my dad was too busy.
Okay, in case you may not be able to hear what he said, my mom saved my life, my dad wanted to abort me, and it would have been no Kanye West because my dad was too busy. So he was referring that he almost got aborted, but it was his mom who actually saved his life. And he also mentioned that he almost killed his own daughter because of the abortion issues here. So to sum up, he denounced abortion, saying that his parents almost aborted him, and he also said that he almost killed his own daughter, that even if my wife, referring to Kim Kardashian West, were to divorce me after the speech, she brought North into the world even when I didn't want to. But at the same time, he also believes that abortion should still remain legal, but there should be financial support for struggling new mothers.
Can we say that he is serious about his presidential bid? Or is it the whole thing is just another publicity stunt on his part?
That is definitely a big question here, because during the presidential elections, whether it's the rallies, we've only seen President Trump as well as Joe Biden and the other Democrats, but we don't really see Kanye West. But to see this debut rally is definitely very unexpected.
Yeah, so is he officially on state ballot?
Well, based on the reports here, Kanye West has already missed the deadline to be qualified for the ballot in several states. So therefore, he needs to collect enough signatures to appear on the ballot in the number of other states. So last week, he was qualified to appear on Oklahoma's presidential ballot, which is the first state where he met the requirements before the deadline. But in order to appear on South Carolina's ballot, he needs to collect at least 10,000 signatures by noon local time today.
Probably he still have time.
Yes, hopefully, if he does have the time, if he does collect at least 10,000 signatures, he might be qualified for the ballot.
Okay, thank you for this story from the US. And
Thank
what
you.
about other development in Thailand, Kunat?
And just so you know, these are the stories we've been following today.
Thailand has recorded one new coronavirus infection today. The new case came back from Singapore and is now under state quarantine. The total number of infections is now 3,250, with no new recoveries nor fatalities. The CCSA is due to meet this Wednesday to consider the sixth phase of lockdown easing, which might allow migrant workers from Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos to enter the country. At the same time, relaxation of entry restrictions on certain foreign tourist arrivals, visitors to trade exhibitions, and film crews will also be considered at the meeting. The Thai police are collecting evidence for possible legal action against leaders of the anti-government protest. Initially, the police could invoke the Land Traffic Act against the protesters, as well as the State of Emergency Decree and Disease Control Act. However, they later said there's no need to summon the protest leaders to acknowledge any charges against them.
So over the weekend and right now, today, we still see how students are very active in protest against the government. And it's not only in Bangkok, but it also happened in Chiang Mai and Ubon Ratchathani as well. So what's the implication of student rallies during this time that COVID-19 is still in place and then the government is going to have cabinet reshuffle? Right now, we have Dr. Ekapan Pintawanit, Acting Director of Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, Mahidol University, joining us live in the studio. สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์
Thank you for joining us. So the students are back on the streets after more than 3 months break because of the coronavirus, right? All right. So what do you make of the latest demonstrations by the students?
The thing is, like, of course, like it has been started months ago before the pandemic of the COVID-19, and of course, like we expected that maybe the momentum of the rally would not continue or would be discontinued because it has been suspended for quite a certain period of time.
Yeah.
But I think it's like there are certain conditions that make how you call that, like the wake of the new wave of this rally. There are certain points that are very important. For example, like the protracted using of enforcing of the emergency decree, which means actually like in several countries they have stopped, you know, after just some few weeks, but the prolongation of the enforcement of the emergency decree also, how you call it, like calling for some kind of united emotion that under the how you call it, authoritarian government, there are certain laws that have been enforced for too long, and it has been using as a legal instrument in order to control people. So I think that's how it is in this kind of circumstances.
So there are some new factors in that led the students to take to the streets, right? Of course, there was the discontentment is a continuation of the sentiments from the previous months, right? But now you have the coronavirus and the impact, and then the continuing use of the state of emergency.
That's right.
But it looks like the students are not afraid of the state of emergency because it's still in effect, right?
Because like there are certain conditions of it. Because like the students are trying to argue that what they are doing is under the Constitution. So then there are certain rights that have been given according to the Constitution, the rights to assembly peacefully. And of course, like they are trying to indicate that the instruction that they have given to the protesters are set at a certain point comply with the public health regulations. So then it is quite difficult for the government to exercise any laws in order to stop the public assembly without being accused of violating the Constitution by themselves.
You must have seen reaction on social media world. On the one hand, people are quite strongly supportive of the students. Mostly must be young people. But on the other hand, you can see how older people raise questions whether this is true and why are they doing this at this very juncture. So from viewpoint of peace activists, what do you like people to see this in perspective?
It is good that people start to question. It's not necessary that everyone will agree with the protesters or with the students, but as long as they start to question and just try to gather the information and try to answer those questions by themselves. So then I think this is the way that the democratic society should be. I don't really aim that everyone in this society will agree with the students, but I hope that everyone who disagree would be capable to question and to question with certain reasons, rational to put some rational questions and try to look for the answers that are logical answers. So then this is how we can have how you call that some kind of debates or peaceful debates and some kind of argument. So it's good that it's good that they start to question.
Yes. No, but the big challenge is how to prevent these demonstrations or the students' movement from becoming another factor that would further divide the society, right? So how do you see the ways forward that students can continue with their exercises, right? Which is we believe within the constitutional right, and then on the other side of the aisle, there are people, as Kun Tatha said, against it, and of course there have always been fear that this thing could blow up in another open conflict or even violent conflict.
We have to believe. We have to understand that Thailand has been polarized for over a decade. So, what can make a broken glass more broken? So we are already in the deeply divided society. So then, let's make it this way. That okay, we know that we don't agree with each other. We know that in this society we are different. We are different than each other, and maybe we are even in the different polars, and we are put in the different polarizations of the political camps. But then, how people who are already polarized can live together in the same society? I think this is the way that we have to find a solution. I don't require or I don't expect that Thai people will be totally united, and I think that's going to be a kind of dictator society. So then, if we are already aware that our society is already divided, so try to find certain ways that totally different opinions, different political ideologies have certain space that we can exchange. For those who are opposing the action of the students, please feel free to give your own opinion, and try to, and please, when you express your opinion, try to provide some justification to those opinions with certain logics that can explain to the other people. There might be something that's very useful for those who are opposing the opinion or the action of the students, that might be useful to make our democratic society grow and growing up and progress in the future.
But do you think the students' demands, especially ones calling on the House to be dissolved and a new constitution to be drafted, do you think they are practical or they are reasonable?
Everything is possible. These are the political instruments. Of course, like to dissolve the House of Representatives is also a means and also the political tools that can be used when there are certain different opinions and certain political conflict in the society. So then to dissolve the parliament, so then it means that to let the people decide again of what kind of political camps that people prefer to be holding the government administration power. And then that's how it goes. So I don't see any opposition to such idea. And then another condition is, actually there are three, right? The second is when they are requesting to have like the people constitution draft.
That's right. Yeah.
Of course, we acknowledge that this constitution has a lot of problems, a lot of obstacle, and there are so many things that needs to be amended. And of course, like if we can have a constitution that all the people could participate, all kind of camps or political concerns can be participating. So then it's going to be a constitution for everyone, right? So then I think that's also a means to resolve the conflict, because when we set a kind of rules that everyone can share and everyone acknowledge and aware and respect, so then it's going to be a kind of fair play in the political arena. And then of course, like when we talk about the constitution is it's just like a commitment between the states and the people who live in the states. So then if this commitment contains the people preference, so I wholeheartedly believe that people will respect this constitution. The third one is about the
ending of the harassment.
Yeah, juridical harassment and a kind of intimidation.
That's the first thing the government can really comply with easily if they want to.
That's the thing. I mean, these three things can be done if there's some preference from the authorities, and of course, like, but we can see that how this group of students and the youth come up, because like lately, the enforced disappearance that has been like a kind of the norms of the people in this society and has been ignored by the authorities. So that's also somehow the people see that there's some kind of injustice happened in this society, and that's why many of their friends and colleagues who have been coming out and trying to express their political opinions have been arrested. So I think this is how they learn the negative impact from the extreme authoritarian exercise. So that's why they just want the opposite side of it, which is the democracy itself.
Not far from Thailand, and the most recent case is about Hong Kong. We can see how the protesters coming out and protest for years. But finally, the Chinese government used the law, national security law, to quell the protest. What's the risk, or what's the possibility of this kind of risk in Thailand that you can project, that if the government go extreme and using the law to try to stop the protester? What would be the scenario?
The thing is, like, Thailand is not China, and of course, like the way that to exercise the power will not lead to any to the end or to the conflict resolution. The thing is, like, if I have to ask a question to the public and even to the authority, that the situation in Hong Kong is totally completely finished, I don't think it is really finished. It just only stopped some kind of activities for some time, and then of course, like, there will be certain period of time that it will break out, and then that's the clarification that if the Thai government wants to follow the same path, it's not going to be a very beautiful and rosy path. It's going to be very rough and rocky ones. So then, if you believe that to exercise the power, I think they have to understand that they have done that for 6 years, when they have full authority in hand, and they still could not stop this kind of movement. The enforcement of these extreme authoritarian laws, it's just like when you, it's just like action and the reaction effect. you put the basketball very hard into the wall, it bounce back harder. And then, of course, when you have to make it rebound harder, so that it's bound back even harder. So then the more authority that Thai authority will be used, you can expect that the reaction will be even harder and very risky to risk the violence. And of course, any government that begin to use the violence against the people, the life of the government is extremely short.
But on the other hand, we see how Joshua Wong is trying to say that it's time to help our friends in Thailand to try to empower. But for the student activists themselves, what should be the line that they should be careful as well?
The thing is, like, I don't have a direct affiliation with the organizer of the rally. So I don't know exactly what they think about. I just only appreciate what they do. But of course, like on the way coming here, I talked on the phone with one of my colleagues that it would be very good if they learn some experiences from the other demonstrations or rallies, because first of all, the intention of having a peaceful demonstration requires a lot of experiences. And then if there are some experience learned from the other countries or from the other demonstrations, so then it's more likely that they can handle the demonstration in Thailand more peacefully. So then it is always good to learn experience from the other people or the other countries.
You know, but for some people, it looks like the students are stepping on a rather dangerous ground, largely because some of them, anyway, are trying to give the impression that they want to drag in the monarchy into this picture of conflict. So, what would be your note of caution for the students as far as this particular issue is concerned?
The thing is, we are under the constitution monarchy. So then the monarchy is one of political, how you call it, like the authority, the structure of this country. So then to mention about the monarchy is always possible because we talk about the monarchy all the time. So, we cannot stop talking about the monarchy. But the thing is, like, to criticize the monarchy or any, not just even monarchy, to criticize other people, to have a kind of considered wordings in talking about these institutions, individuals, or even the institution like the monarchy, would be suggested, because then we will proceed into the how you call that the era when we can talk about institutions that are important to our country with some rational, not with the angers or with emotions or things like that. So then I think we believe that other authorities or even those who are involved with the monarchy by themselves would be able to accept the very fair and frank opinions with the rational ways of expressing those opinions.
You mean within the framework of a bigger political picture of the country, right?
That's right.
But not out of personal dislike or emotions on this issue.
I think, like, for the personal emotions, we can talk with friends at home.
Okay.
And but to talk in the public, I think we try to set how you call it, deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy means that you can criticize everyone.
That's right.
But when you criticize, you have to be cautioned that you have to have a manner in the criticism.
Constructively.
Constructively, yeah, that's right.
But so far we haven't yet heard a reaction from the Prime Minister, who is the main target of the demonstrators,
That's
right?
right.
What options do you think he has short of meeting all the demands of the students? Does he have any other options?
Maybe he wants to listen more to understand. So then right now, maybe he doesn't catch enough of the communication. But that happens in in so many circumstances that there are some demonstrations or rallies. So it takes some time for the authority to, to analyze the situation, to analyze the information, and then at certain point we have to come up to respond to that.
But you have a feeling that he might be underestimating the strength of the student movement.
I don't think so. You know, like if somebody just come up and say bad things about you all the times, I don't think anybody can, apart from those who have reached nirvana, okay, they can just like
very difficult.
Yeah, but so then if otherwise you have to have some certain feelings or certain reaction soon. So then I think that's how the nature of the human being.
So that's implication of the tension which is happening in the street of Bangkok regarding student activists in Bangkok and in Chiang Mai provinces as well. So that lesson learned for protesters and the government of how they should assess and respond to the situation. And that's all from Thai PBS World tonight regarding the interview with Dr. Ekapan Pintawanit and the overall developments in many issues that we bring this to you. But Dr. Ekapan will be joining us again in Thanlok with Thai PBS World at 8 p.m. So please stay tuned. Right now, thank you very much for watching and bye for now.
Thank you.
When the world is in crisis
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
and people are looking for hope and answers, Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.